And today's Dafyomi is Zevachim Daf Kofei Zevachim 105. And today's Dafyomi, we're going to start on the bottom of Kof Daled Amud Beis, where the Gemara asks a series of questions. Where the Gemara says a series of questions. Ba'i Rebbe Elazar. 4 lines from the bottom on Kof Daled Amud Beis. Rebbe Elazar asked the following question: Parman Esrafim Osirim Anisrafim. So the bulls and the goats that are supposed to be burned outside of the courtyard of the temple, outside of the Machanos, outside of Sholosh Machanos, Shayata Rubo B'miut. But what happened was the majority of it went out with the minority of a limb, and that minority of the limb is what makes it a majority. And when they go out of the Azar, that's when the people who are dealing with it become Tameh. Why do we take the mute of this limb, the minimal part of this limb, and we throw it after the majority of the animal? And so we say, do we say do we throw for the majority of the limb, i.e., we go backwards, and therefore we say the limb has not gone out, and so therefore the garments are not tamei yet. Or do we say no, it goes follow the majority of the animal, and therefore the people are doing to become tamei? So the Gemara says, well, in that case, it's obvious that we follow the majority of the animal and not the majority of the limb. And so the people who are dealing with it are tamei. So really the question is, that we're on the bottom of 104b, that half of the animal has gone out of the courtyard, but that only becomes, that half of the animal is only with the majority of that limb. Haimi Uta de Aver, so now the remaining part of that limb, do we say Basar Rov Aver Shadina? Why do we throw we're on top of 105a, do we throw the remaining part of that limb after the majority of the limb, and so therefore we view that minimal part as though it went out, and so therefore, so now the majority of the animal has gone out of the courtyard. Odelma basar behema shadina, or do we say no? It follows the animal, and so therefore the majority has not gone out. So Rabbi Rapuna Masni Labigavre, so he had this teaching or this question as it relates to human beings. Where 5 people are dealing with the animal, and 3 of them went out, and 2 of them remained inside the courtyard. What will be the law? Do we say basarov misaskin? Do we follow the majority who are dealing with it? And since the majority who are dealing with it had gone out already of the courtyard, it's as though all of them went out, and also even the ones who are inside are tamei. Or do we say, basar behema aslinan? Do we follow the majority of the animal and not the majority of the people who are dealing with it? And so since so therefore we ignore the fact of who itself is, whether or not the majority of the people are dealing with it or not. And it doesn't matter what the people have done, whether the majority of people are out or in. That doesn't matter. So the Gemara says, we leave this question unresolved. A 4th question, top of 105a, 5 lines from the top. By Rebbe Elazar, so let's say if these bulls and these goats, they went out, and now they went back in. So now the question is, what's the law of those that are now carrying it from the Azara the second time, from the courtyard the second time? Are their garments also going to become tamei? Do we say that since once it went out, and even though it returned to the courtyard, therefore we're going to say that the initial people brought out are still tamei. We don't care that went back. Odelma kiven the hadar. Or do we say no? Once it went back, the people who initially carried it out are no longer tamei. Amar Rav Abba bar Mamel tashma. So let's try and bring a proof from our Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? Hayusovonoson b'motos. Let's say they were carrying it in their bowls. Harishonim yatsu chutzlachom masazar. Once the first people went outside of the courtyard of the walls of the courtyard, v'achronim yatsu, and the latter people did not go out. Harishonim sheyatsu chutzlachom masazara. The first people that went outside the walls of the courtyard, mitamim begadim, their garments become tamei. V'achrona, but the latter people, mitamim begadim ad sheyatsu, A lot of people, their garments are not tamei until they also go out. So, and if you want to say that if they went out and they came back, then they'll become tamei, and that their tuma has departed. If you want to say that if they went out and they come back, they remain tamei. If that's the case, hanach ikid gavai l'tamei. Those that are still in the courtyard should become tamei, because the departure depends. The yitzia, if it goes out, that depends on the cow and not those carrying it. And since the bull went out, so also those people that are inside should become tamei. So therefore, we want to say that the reason why they're not tamei is because even if they became tamei, if they would go back in, they become tahor again. And so therefore, the people who are inside are not tamei, because it's like they went out and went back in. And so therefore, we see from here that if they go back in, they become tahor. So Amar Ravina says, no, that doesn't make sense. V'tizbara, you want to say that? That's logical. Aba'inan, we need, in order to become tamei from the bull, you need to fulfill that after you come to the camp. And since they're still in the camp, that won't fit. So Gemara says, "Oh, Rabbi Eliezer, heicha what was his question?" So the Gemara says, "Could go into Nikita of the Kulsi." No, Rabbi Elazar's question was where they were outside and they were holding it with poles, and the animal was inside. So therefore, we want to know under those circumstances, so they're able to become tamei because they're outside, but the bull is inside. So we want to say that since they go back in and the bull is inside, they're not tamei, like a bull that never went out. So the Gemara says we have no answer to all these questions. Tana Rabbanan, Parim upara. So now the Gemara brings another brayso with respect to the bull and the goats themselves. Parim. So these are the bulls and the goats that are burnt. Upara and the red heifer. Messiah mishtaleach, and the goat that is sent out to Azazel. And Hamishaleach, the one who sends out the goat. Hasorfan, the one who burns the bull and the goat. Hamotzion, the one who carries them out from the courtyard. Mitame begadim. All these cases, their garments become tamei. Vehin atzman, and the bull and the goats, vehin atzman ein mitame begadim, and the bull and the goats themselves are not going to touch. If something touches them, they do not make them tamei. Meir says they make the food and the liquid tamei. So he says that the bull and the goats, the red heifer and the goats and the bulls, they are making food and liquid tamei. But the seir meshtalech ain't tamei. But the goat that's sent out to Azazel does not make the one who sends it out tamei. Shehu chai, because this goat that's being sent out is alive. And the thing that's alive does not make liquid and food tamei. So Gemara says, Bishlam Rabbi Meir, makes sense according to Rabbi Meir, Keditana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, like Rabbi Shmuel taught, the Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, because he said, it makes sense according to Rabbi Meir why he says, why all these things make the food and liquid tamei, because he says, I'll call Zera Zarua. It says in order for something to become tamei, it has to be a food item, it has to have liquid put on it. Just like the food, which is not going to be a strict tama, meaning to say, to make a human and clothing tamei, we need the hechsher. It needs water to fall on them. Also, anything that is never going to be completely severe tamei needs a hechsher. And so therefore, Yatsa Nevelos of Tahar, this excludes a carcass of a kosher bird. Just so if we tamei tamei, it will make people and clothing tamei. Ve'ein tzricha hechsher, and doesn't need a hechsher. And so therefore, this explains what Rabbi Meir says, that since the para and the parim and the sar mishtalech, in the end they're going to be a tumah chamura, therefore they don't need a hechsher tumah. And so therefore they don't need to be capable of receiving tumah. And so therefore they can even make tamei while they're alive. So the Rabbanan, if they agree with this position of Tan Berishmo, even the goat should make something tamei. Bilesley, Afil Paramu Paramenon. And if he doesn't agree with that, then even the red heifer and the bulls that are sent out should, from where do we know that they make tamei? So Kiyasa Rabdimi Amri B'Ma'arava. So he says that what Rabbi Shmuel said, that we have to reinterpret it. He says anything that will not become Tumah Chamura needs a hechsher, and anything that will become does not need hechsher. It means something else. It means tzrich and hechsher tumah mimakom achar. They need to become tummy from something else, meaning to say they need to touch something that's tamei. But anything that will make a severe tumah does not need a tumah from something else. So by Rebbe Lazar asked the question: at what point do these bulls and the goats that are burnt? At what point do they become tamei? At what point do they transmit this tumah? By Rebbe Lazar, do they make food and liquid tamei in the azara like when it's outside? Do we say do we say that since they haven't gone out, it's like they're missing the action, and so therefore since they can't make the tumah chamura, they also don't make the tumah chala. Or we don't say that. After he asked this question, he then answered it. Yeah, if they haven't gone out, they don't make the food in the liquid tamei. So by minei Rabbi Abba Bar Shmuel Rabbi Chia Bar Abba Nivlas of Tar or Rabbi Meir or Ma'oshay tamei. Let's the carcass of a kosher bird, according to Rabbi Meir, Ma'oshay tamei b'kezayis. Is that able to make the carcass of an oaf tower, if an olive portion of it touches, so is it able to make something tumah? So do we say the machatala arawoti? If there's a kazayas that's on the ground, then it's not a question. So for sure, it doesn't make the food and liquid to touch it because it will never be swallowed. The nakapapume or tibayach, and also if it's swallowed, for sure that it will make it tamei. Kitibayach the nako abiyadai. We're talking about a case where he's holding in his hand the mechusar kriva, the mechusar b'aisid. I mean that since he still has to something that's missing, being brought is like missing in action. Oh well, and so then he answered the question on top of 105b mechusar kriva. It's not missing in action, and so therefore it is mitami to makawa. So now the Gemara says another question. They said 13 things about a kosher bird, and this is one of them. You have to intend to eat it, or else it's not going to make it tamei. It does not need to have liquid poured on it. So and it transmits tumah at the size of an egg. My love, isn't this the position of Rabbi Meir? So we see that in Nevelas oath, a carcass of a bird that's kosher transmits the tumah only if it has the size of an egg. Gemara says no, it's the Rabbanan he. Gemara says it can't be the Rabbanan. It needs machshava, but does not need hechsher. This is Rabbi Meir, who says that it does not need a hechsher. So Gemara says no, not necessarily. Gemara says no. But the next quote says that if it was slaughtered or malika, then it's no longer. It says it no longer transmits tumah if it's a treifa. That's Rabbi Meir. So Gemara says, do you really want to say this conclusion that Reisha was safe for Rabbi Meir and Utziyasa Rabbana? The middle and the end is Rabbi Meir. The beginning and the end is Rabbi Meir, and the middle is the Rabbana. Gemara says, in Reisha was safe for Rabbi Meir and Utziyasa Rabbana. So then the Gemara says, Amalei Rav Hamnuna Rabbi Zera, Lo teistiv akarachach ad amras li'amil. So don't sit down on the ground until you explain this to me. Nivlas of Taro Rabbi Meir, Monula Rishon V'Sheni, O Ein Monin Rishon V'Sheni. So he says, if you have a carcass of a kosher bird, according to Rabbi Meir, who says that it's mitami tumas kawa, even if there's only an olive size amount, do we count for rishon or sheni? Meaning, say, if the one who touches it becomes a rishon tuma, and another food item that touches that becomes a sheni. O emon rishon sheni, or do we not do that? So I'm really kol hilchot mitame adam b'maga. So Reb Zera says to Reb Nuna, any situation where a person who touches it becomes tamei, monim barishon with sheni, then we would count first and second. Kol hilchot de ematame adam b'maga emonim barishon. So if a person who touches becomes tamei, then we do count rishon sheni. But if the person wouldn't, we don't count it. And if let's say you have two pieces of nevela and each one of them is not the size of an olive, which is the size to transmit tumah, but if you had a liquid that connects them, then they would be chibur. So and that works with tumah kala to make food and liquids tamim. Ve'ein chibur with tumah chamor, but not for astringent tumah to make earthen utensils tamei. But we should ask, monim barishon l'sheni, the monim barishon, oh monim rishon. In that case, does it make a first and second degree tumah or not? Amarle, he says no. Kol hechem tami adam monim barishon l'sheni. He says, no, this is the rule, that only if it makes a human being tamei do we count rishon and sheni. So now we learn to the Mishnah with respect to tumas begadim, the tumah of garments, or those who deal with the bull, that once the first people went out and the later people didn't go out, the first people become tamei and the later people don't. If they both went out, both of them become tamei. So the Gemara says, where do we learn this law? That once the bull goes out of the courtyard, it makes the people whose garments who are dealing with it tamei. Menani mioi. So the Gemara says the Tanur Rabbanan, because we went to the Brisa lahalan by respect to the bull and the Kohen Mashiach and the Param never shall tzibur on there chutz l'shalosh machanos, outside of three camps. Ukan, and by the bull of Yom Kippur it says l'machane achat, outside of one camp. That once it goes outside of that zara, the garments are tamei. So the Gemara says, well, what's the idea that we have to take out the bull and the goats outside three camps? V'higu from Minon, the Tanur Rabbanan, because it says l'tzilas kol apor mechutz l'machaneh. That's chutz l'shalosh machanos. That's outside three camps. That's outside three camps. Well, you know, el machaneh achas, maybe outside one camp. Shekashul mer parayda chutz l'machaneh she'ein tzarich l'mar. Doesn't need to say mechutz l'machaneh. Shari kvar nemar kasher thurafet parashon. So to tell you, we don't oil machaneh shniya. It says outside two camps. Kashul mer mechutz l'machaneh badeshen she'ein tzarich l'mar. It didn't need to say badeshen. Shari kvar nemar al sheva chadeshen yisaref. That's what l'tein l'machaneh shlishis. That's how we know you have to take it outside three camps, i.e. modern day outside Jerusalem. Rabbi Shimon who says that they're only transmit tumah from the moment they're burned. What does he do with it? Outside three camps. Just like there at the east of Jerusalem. And so therefore it's done to the east of Jerusalem. According to the Rabbanan, how do they know where to burn it? To the north of Jerusalem. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, a base adesh in Israel. You need to put it there, the ashes of the altar, so it's called the base adesh, and only after that could you burn it. Okay, we'll stop here. This is today's Daf Yomi Baruch Hashem, and we'll pick it up tomorrow morning after 8 o'clock davening, God willing. God willing.
Thank you.